Car and Biker here, and it's time for the answers for the Q&A. And I've had so many questions. So whether I'm going to get through them all or not, I don't know, but I'm going to try. So lots of questions to get through. First one from Gixer14 or Jixer14, depending on how you want to say it. Can I ask if Mrs. Calm has ever asked you to shave your hair off, as it looks like you could do with Suffolk Andy's shears? No offence. No, she's not, strangely enough. I mean, it's going a bit now. I'm going to have to Jim paint it at some point, I think. Get the old razor on it. But when I first met Mrs. Calm, I had hair I could sit on. So I don't know if I've got any old photos to dig one out. If I have, I'll put one kind of there or something. But yeah, I used to be a long-haired lout, and that's what she liked about me. So I hope it's not a Samson effect. Next one, Stephen Unsworth. Where is the best place you have ridden, and is there anywhere that you would love to ride? I, for one, would love to ride across America. It's a tricky one. I suppose I think the best ride out I've been on so far for roads has got to be the Northern Vloggers ride out, which was all around Yorkshire, and it took in the Yorkshire TT, which is basically just a stretch of long, twisty, bendy road that is up and down hills and what have you, and it's a lovely ride. Where do I want to ride? Well, we're lucky to live quite near the ferries, Hull to Zeebrugge, so I'm hoping at some point to get the bike on the ferry with Mrs. Calm on the back and head across to Holland, and then do a little bit of a tour of some of Europe. So I've always wanted to go to Switzerland, never been. Mrs. Calm is part German, so we'd probably want to go to Germany. Head through to Austria and Italy. Italy is where we honeymooned, around Lake Garda, and then probably back through France and through the tunnel and back home. Who's next? Ray Lombardi. Now that you've been riding for some time, are you planning a long road trip on the bike? Perhaps alone, perhaps with Mrs. Car and Biker? And if so, where would you go? Wales, Lake, Peak District, France, rest of Europe, America, to name but a few? I think I've just answered that one. And O2 Big Kev also asked if you could go and ride anywhere in the world, where and why? And hopefully I've answered that one for you as well, Kev. Okay, Psycho Ganstar. If you lived somewhere with lots of trails and wooded areas, would you consider getting a dirt bike? If so, what type and why? I definitely would. I was actually chatting with Lech on a bike about that today, about the potential of getting like a 250 off-road bike, and maybe doing a bit of training on the off-road side of things just for the fun of it. No idea what to get though. I don't know anything about off-road bikes at all, so I'd have to do a bit of research. Mark Ulliott. Hi mate, my question is, have you sold the Divi? If not, are you planning on selling it when it's fixed? Well, it's fixed. It's back in the garage next to the Quacky. I'm looking at keeping them both for the time being. If I come to sell, next time I come to sell a bike, obviously I'm going to sell a bike. It will probably be the XJ6 that goes. I'll probably get replaced with another sports tourer, something like a Z1000 SX. But at the minute, I've got to keep it. It sounds too good. The exhaust on it is gorgeous. Luke Newby. Oops, accidental scrollage. What would be your dream bike and why? And Peds Z Bandit. What's your dream bike? Money no issue. The Infamous Biker. What's your dream bike apart from the Diavel? Sharky one. You have £10,000. What bike would you buy and why? I think we can answer all them at once. I mean, there's so many bikes to choose from, and I just want to try each and every bike that I can, really. I'm not in any rush to build up. I've started on a 600, I've moved to a 750 with the Z, and I'll probably carry on building up more and more power until I either reach a point where I don't need any more power, or I don't think I want any more power, or I end up with the ZZR 1400, which is probably the, well, you can't get much more powerful than that, can you, without starting to customise or turbo. So I suppose probably heading up to something like that. I mean, there's other things that I really like, things like the Ducatis, especially the super sports bikes, Panigale, that kind of thing. But I think realistically I'm never going to own one, because I don't think I'd be able to actually fit on it properly. Even though I'm quite small, I find that super sports bikes are just a bit too cramped for me. So who's next? It's another combined one. So Devon Mellon, what were your previous careers? The infamous biker, have you always worked as a programmer stroke developer? And James Edgington, what jobs have you had? Well, I started off with a paper round when I was about 12. I first got into computers with my brother got a ZX Spectrum. He actually had a ZX81, but it failed very quickly, like they all did, and he got a Spectrum, and he played his Football Manager and whatever, Galaxians, that kind of thing on it. And I never really enjoyed the game side of it that much, although nowadays I do enjoy gaming. But I wanted to program it, so I just enjoyed the challenge of programming. So I kind of knew I was always going to end up in computers. But then again, they say that if you do the thing you love, you learn to hate the thing you love. So maybe it's a double-edged sword. First job I had was actually car wash attendant and doing valets, that kind of thing, valeting cars. There is something nice about polishing a car. The last car I had before I got fed up with cars, I did spend 7.5 hours polishing it one day. It was gleaming, but you're all probably thinking, 7.5 hours, that's a bit too much. First proper job, I was a software trainer, so I was teaching people how to use WordPerfect, Lotus 123, Microsoft Office, Data Ease, DBase, and then moving into Novell NetWare. Windows NT was just starting then, but it was mainly Novell NetWare for networking and things. I then became a hardware technician, back in the days where that meant getting your soldering iron out, so it got boring and I stopped doing it when it got to the point where repairing a computer meant swapping a board out. And then I decided to take up programming again because I'd enjoyed it when I was a kid. My first actual paid work was as a 13-year-old, I think it was, 13 or 14, writing a program on the Amstrad CPC 464 and getting it published in a magazine. I got £15 for 10 minutes work, and I think that's the best rate I've ever had. That's slightly depressing. I moved into software development again, and I've stuck with that for about the last probably 12 years, 12, 13 years. Yeah, so that's my career. I feel like I'm having an interview. So who's next? Tom Philby, what's your opinion on the Ducati Scrambler? No idea. Sorry. Skeggy Cruiser. Okay, first question. What the hell was that squeaking on your bike? I had no idea then. I had no idea when you asked the question. And I've still got no idea now. But they've took apart all the various bits and pieces, re-greased everything, and it's not doing it anymore, so I'm happy. What's the longest distance you've ridden in one day? That's probably Wyvern Biker's Ride that he did last time, the Ashby to Jack and Jill's Cafe, as he called it. Yes, Keith, I'm never going to live that one down. And Melton Barbara, and I think I clocked up somewhere in the region of 300 to 350 miles that day. If you couldn't ride a bike anymore, say for medical reasons, would you consider having a trike? Absolutely. I'd consider having a trike anywhere. Trikes are cool, no matter what anybody says. I wouldn't give up a bike for one, but I might have one as a, instead of a car maybe. Can you hold an umbrella on a trike? Fisher Boy put his sticker up today. Why did you take up motovlogging and who convinced you to do it? And then I've also got Lurch on a Bike, motovlogging stroke why get a camera, and Speedy Boo Lukes, can I ask you what motivated stroke inspired you to start motovlogging? Also I believe, oh right, that's the second question, so we'll go to that one in a minute. What inspired me to take up motovlogging? I had a cheap camera anyway. I got a Drift HD. I was lucky to get it just when the Ghost came out, and they thought that or just when the S came out it might have been, and they thought the HD was going to get dropped, so the price really fell off, and then it went back up again, so I managed to get it quite cheap. And I thought I was going to use that just for recording rides, for insurance, and also to make sure I was riding properly, because obviously I was new to riding at the time, and I wanted to see what I was missing while I was actually riding. Now when I was learning to ride, I was watching people like Roadcraft Nottingham, Two Wheel Steve. After learning to ride, well, probably during learning to ride as well, I came across people like Skeggy Cruiser and Jim Payne, the old fat on a motorbike, and it just looked like fun. And I thought, well, I'll give that a try, and it was fun, and it's been brilliant. I mean, it's got me to the point where I've met lots of motovloggers, lots of bikers, lots of people I wouldn't have met otherwise. So it was worthwhile doing it. So if you're thinking of taking up motovlogging, anybody, then I thoroughly recommend it. So still with Speedy Boo Lukes, onto the next page. I believe you said a while ago you only started riding in recent years. What made you take to two wheels? Peds Z Bandit also said what drew you to motorbikes. And Sky the Dragon 37, what was your first bike and why did you choose it? And why did you decide to start riding a motorbike? Yeah, I'm about a year into riding now. About a year and a month I've been on a bike. I suppose technically I started last July, it's now October, doing a CBT, and then every other weekend I did a lesson or so and did my test in September, and then bought my first bike at the end of September. On exactly the same date, 1 year later, I bought my second bike, so I've started a tradition there. I've always been into machinery. I like fast cars. I like drivers' cars, I suppose, rather than fast cars necessarily. Things that are fun. Although I've now become entirely bored with cars. I used to fly aeroplanes, and the problem with having diabetes made that awkward for getting the medicals. I thought about taking up microlights or paragliding, or something where you're not flying over built-up areas, so you don't need a full medical and a full license, but that kind of seems like a bit of a backward step. So one day I was on with 2 weeks off. We'd gone for a weekend in Wales, and I just said to Mrs. C, I quite fancy trying out a motorbike. And it was just a whim really, so I went and did my CBT on a whim, found out I loved it, carried on, and I've not stopped loving it yet. First bike was the XJ6 Diversion F, the one that you can see on many of my videos. Brilliant starter bike. The only thing that was wrong with the XJ6F was the fact that it was too quiet, and that is now sorted, so I can see myself keeping it a little while yet. But then again, I'm impulsive, so who knows. So who's next? Louise Clark. How did you come up with the name Calm Biker? People tell me I never get flustered. I don't know if that's part of the job that I do, the analysis side of the job. But when a problem's put in front of me, and it is often, not so much nowadays, but it used to be that I was the person that got sent in when everything else had gone wrong, and I did the firefighting. And I think doing that for years just gets you to the point where you don't get flustered by things generally. I get annoyed by things, but I try not to let things get me annoyed to the point where I go silly, although obviously I've proved in the past that occasionally I do. So that's one part of it, but really I was trying to be calm. I think I said that in one of my early videos. I didn't come up with a name because I am calm, but more that I try to be calm. If you're not calm on a bike, if you're getting angry and flustered and panicky or whatever it might be, then potentially you're putting your life at risk. So, you know, being calm is the best thing. Not that I say obviously that I can be all the time, because when your life is put at risk, your immediate response is it's natural to get angry. Mr. and Mrs. B's brain dump. What bike made you think, I like this, apart from the Honda Grom? Yes, indeed. Still need to test ride that Honda Grom, Mr. B. Every bike I've ridden, really. Everything above 125. Sorry if you're a 125 rider. Having said that, I've not ridden anything, aside from a 125, I've not ridden anything under a 600, but bikes are all just amazing. I love them all. Really enjoyed going to the back of the Booster, although you didn't let me ride it. The MT-09 was great fun. That was a bit of a hooligan bike, but whether I could have lived with it realistically, I don't know. The Z750R that I've got now is brilliant. I love it. No doubt in another year I'll be thinking I need more power, but at the minute that is a great bike. But the first time I got on the XJ6, I'd been on Hornets to learn, pulled out of the dealership and thought I'd give it a twist, and that made me go, oh yes. So, but yeah, all of them. Next page. No idea how long this has been going on for. The Lewis Vlogs 1. How are you coping with your tinnitus? Mine's been playing up again. Has yours gone? It's not gone. Mine is a mixture of a high-pitched whistle that seems to come and go daily and a low-pitched hum, which is permanent and really irritating. On a bike, makes no odds. You know, you've got the wind noise, I can't really tell. I do sometimes wear earplugs, sometimes I don't, depending on what ride I'm planning on doing. The only time really it affects me badly is trying to sleep. So I have a machine that generates white noise that means that I can't hear anything while I'm sleeping. Hopefully I'll be able to hear a smoke alarm, but then again hopefully I'll never have to. But the white noise machine is really, really good. The Rosgriz, would you like a cuppa? Yes please, that would be lovely. Coffee for me, no sugar. I don't know if this is a reference to my coffee drinking. My coffee machine broke and I had to send it back for repair after having it for about 3 months. And I don't know if the coffee machine repair people were making a point or not, but on the document that came back it pointed out that I'd made 1,761 coffees in that time, which I suppose is quite a lot for 3 months. But I do like my coffee, and it means that I barely ever have to sleep. Thinking about coffee, I'm going to go and get one. Back in a minute. Nice cup of coffee. Right. Where were we? Would you like a cup of Rosgriz? Alex Brown, when are you doing a meetup? Can mopeds go? What do you think of mopeds? Not got anything planned at the minute. There is a meetup next Saturday that Keith's doing. I can't remember where it is, but if you have a look at Keith's channel, Wife and Biker, you'll see it on there. I won't even try and remember the details because I can't remember, but he's doing one. Been talking with Kev about doing the infamously calm ride every year, but obviously a different route every year. And I'm also talking with Tosh23 at the minute about a themed ride that I'm not going to talk about, but should be funny. Can mopeds go? If you're on a 50cc moped that's limited to 28 miles an hour, probably not realistically, because if we're going to go out and do 150 miles, you're going to be left behind a lot. If you're on a scooter that can go quicker than that, then keep up, do 60 miles an hour, then won't be a problem. What do you think of mopeds? Well, the 28 mile an hour limit I think is ridiculous. I would rather see 16-year-olds either not be able to ride at all, which isn't what I want to see. I'd rather they were allowed to ride 125s, because if you're riding at 28 miles per hour, the kind of normal lowest speed limit, if you take 20 mile an hour limits out of it, is a 30 mile an hour. So if you can't even keep up with traffic in a 30 mile an hour speed limit, what chance have you got when you're getting onto 40, 50, 60 and 70 mile per hour roads? All you're going to do is hold up traffic, and there'll be some idiot driver who wants to cut you up, get past you quicker than is entirely necessary, and I think it adds risk. I'm sure that the idea of the 28 miles per hour limit is to make things safer, but I just don't think that is what actually happens. Okay, who's next? Bex88. Now that you've been riding for around a year, is there anything you've learned that you perhaps wasn't aware of when you first got a bike? This can be anything to do with biking, riding, bike maintenance, safety, gear, costs, other road users, tips and advice, etc. Everything. I think riding a bike has made my driving better. I've been driving for 24 years, since I was 17, and I think I'm a pretty good driver. I think most drivers think they are pretty good drivers, but my observation is massively improved from riding a bike. Other things that I've learned: riding position, the stuff on the IM that I've been doing about road position, I think, and just how you control the bike. I think a lot of that should be on the DSA test. I think the standard test that you do doesn't teach you enough to be as safe as you need to be, if that makes any sense. It gets you safe, but you can be a lot safer. And whilst you're being a lot safer, you can also be a lot faster. So I think a lot of the things that are in the IAM, I'm sure in ROSPA and enhanced as well, I think they should be taught as part of the standard test. I think some of it should probably be taught on the CBT as well, because doing your CBT, an hour on the road or whatever, and half an hour on the pad, and then you're off on the road. There's so much that you haven't learned that you're going to have to either learn through experience, or you will never learn. That I think, maybe some of these things should be brought to the CBT as well. Apart from that, maintenance wise, I've already learned how to do the service the brakes. I've done oil and filters on the bike, pretty badly the first time, but the second time much better. On the cars, really, I never did any maintenance at all. Check the oil, check the fluids, check the tyres, and that was about it. So I'm hoping to learn lots more about maintaining the bike, to the point where with the Kawasaki I can service it, and with the Yamaha I can service it once the warranty's over. Okay, where are we? Mrs. Calm. I'm sure I recognise that name. What do you want for your birthday? This is something that we ask each other every year. I have not got a clue. I think maybe a kilo of Lavazza Black. Before anybody asks, Lavazza Black in a kilo is not anything naughty at all. It's this stuff. Okay. Vulcanian tent. How do you manage the pain in the backside aspect of riding, the practicality of having the gear on when arriving at your destination, etc.? It doesn't really worry me that much. I've got a pair of shoes at work, so I don't have to faff about remembering to take my shoes, because I've forgotten them in the past. Aside from that, if we're going on a distance, any distance, and going somewhere that we want to hang around, then I've got the tent bag which will hold a helmet, and while it's not holding a helmet while we're actually riding, it will hold a helmet bag. So if we go two up somewhere, we can whip off the tank bag, take the helmet bag out, and we've both got a bag for carrying helmets and bits and pieces. It can be a bit of a nuisance, I suppose, having your full gear on all the time, but I suppose it's a price worth paying. Dangerous, oh sorry, no. Well, I'll do that one now since I've started saying it. Dangerous hamster. What's the one piece of advice you would give to any biker? Doesn't even have to be bike related. I suppose it's the same piece of advice I would give to anybody about anything. It applies to bikes, but it applies to everything else as well. So it's keep learning. If you ever reach the point where you think you've learnt everything, then you don't know enough yet to realise that you don't know everything. Keep learning, that's what makes life fun. What makes biking fun is the fact you can keep getting better all the time. It's what makes everything you do fun. And Dangerous Hamster also says, what's your shoe size? Not a clue. I really haven't got a clue. Somewhere 8 or 9 or something, or 10, or I don't know. Somewhere around there. I just go and try shoes on, and if they're too tight I'll try them a bit bigger. Sandmac67. As a fellow diabetic rider, do you do your checks every time before going out on the bike? And do you take testing equipment with you and some yummy sugary goods just in case of hypos? I'm type 2 diabetic, and I'm completely strictly controlled with diet and exercise, so I don't take any medication at the minute, which pretty much means it's very hard for me to have a hypo. I've probably got the same chance of having a hypo as somebody who isn't diabetic, so I don't need to take sugary things with me or anything like that. If I'm going out somewhere and I don't know what food will be available, I'll take some nuts with me to keep me filled up, or I'll plan on somewhere where I can go and see if I can work out beforehand what food will be available. If I'm really stuck, then I will have a testing kit with me so I can take some, have some food and check my blood afterwards. But to be honest, there's not a great deal I could do about it anyway if I'm out on the bike, because going for a run in them big boots is not going to be particularly fun. I suppose I could do some squats or something and try and burn a bit of sugar off. To be honest, my blood sugar now is pretty rigorously controlled. Most people won't understand what it means, but my HbA1c is 4.8%. My blood sugar tends to run fasting around the 5 mark, and I try not to go above 7 at any point from food, so I'm pretty well controlled. I don't eat carby things, so I don't tend to get spiked. So who's next? Shoni Maloney. How would you feel if Mrs. Calm announced that she wanted to learn to ride? I would buy her a bike. Who are your real life heroes or inspirational people? I thought about this one for a while, and I think that there's so many people who do give me inspiration, but the one person recently whose book I read and whose websites and things like that I've been following, and I say recently, a few years ago actually, it's a chap called Rich Roll. If you don't know who Rich Roll is, he's worth a look up. He got to about the age I am now. He tried to go up the stairs at his home and realised that he was sweating profusely from trying to get up the stairs, and he decided to turn his life around. And he turned his life around and actually did it, rather than just thinking about it, which is the kind of inspiration I think people need. So he came up with the idea. He went out for a run and he ran a very, very long way, and he came up with the idea over some time of a thing called the Epic 5. If you've not heard of the Epic 5, you'll have probably heard of Ironman competitions. Ironman competition is where you do a swim for so many miles. Can't remember quite how many miles it is. You then cycle, and then you run. You cycle a lot of miles, and then you run a marathon at the end of it, and it's all done in one day generally. Well, he did the Epic 5. He came up with the idea of that. The Epic 5 was on the Hawaiian Islands in the baking heat, to do 5 Ironman events. He tried to do them in 5 days, but he got waylaid, so he did them in about 7 days. It was a total of 560 miles of cycling, 131 miles of running, and I think it was about a dozen miles of swimming, something like that, 12 or 15 miles of swimming, in 5 days over a 7-day period. So that's quite inspirational. And then the other inspiration on that side of things will be a chap called James Lester. And James Lester did the Epic 5 with Rich Roll, but he was hampered further because he's only got one arm. So if a one-armed man can swim a dozen miles, cycle 500 odd miles and run 130 miles, there's no real reason why I can't be inspired to do something as well. The other one, I suppose, on a completely different thing, I'm a big fan of Stephen King. And again, it's another person who turned his life around. So somebody who was in a job he didn't like, in a pretty poor situation, but from a child he decided he was going to become an author. He set his mind to it, and became one of the best-selling authors ever. Still with Shirley Maloney, Spectrum 48K or Commodore 64, Atari ST or Amiga. That's 2 separate things then. Well, I'll tell you about my brother having a Spectrum, so I suppose it would have to be that. He had the 16K Spectrum. A friend of mine had a Commodore 64, far superior machine, I have to say. So given a choice it would be the Commodore, but in reality it was the Spectrum. Atari ST or Amiga, I never had a 16-bit machine. Can't remember if the Amiga was 16-bit as well or just 32. But never had one of them. I went straight to PC. Your Gravedigger 83. Knowing what you know today, looking back at your life, would you change anything? I'd have eaten less processed food. Basically, processed food, 99% is what caused me to get diabetes. I mean, you've got to die of something, but if you're going to die of something, I'd rather go quick than die of something where they just hack pieces off you until you keel over and finish. Wyvern Biker. Oh, God, there's a list here. What was your first computer? The ZX Spectrum was my brother's. My first computer was shared with my brother, and it was an Amstrad CPC 464, and that was the machine I used to write the piece of software that I sold to the magazines. If you didn't work in IT, what would you have liked to have done? Well, if money was no object, some kind of racing driver. I like speed. I thought about being an ambulance driver at one point, back when there was such a thing as an ambulance driver rather than a paramedic. I also thought about being a teacher. Quite glad I didn't become a teacher, because I don't think nowadays I'd want to be a teacher. The fact you've got no ability to discipline pupils anymore, the fact that parents aren't always backing up the discipline of the schools seems a bit depressing. I'm sure that's only the bad side that the news sends out, and it's probably much better, but I'm happy doing what I do. A lot of videos are filmed during your lunch break. How long do you get? Well, technically 30 minutes, but because I'm working from home and because we're quite flexible, sometimes I'll push that out to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, and just make the time up elsewhere. The job I'm in, if you think you can get through the week and only do your 40 hours, then you've chosen the wrong job. So we tend to be doing 50 to 60 hours a week anyway. So you need that hour on the bike sometimes just to get out of your system. What made you decide to be vegetarian? Without causing offence to anybody, I don't agree with the way that animals are kept and slaughtered. I was actually watching a video the other day, I can't remember who it was by, but somebody was saying about in other countries where they eat dogs or cats or things like that, and my parents are one for that. They'll get all upset at the idea of eating a cat or a dog, but then happily tuck into a cow or a pig. I just don't see a difference between cows, pigs, cats and dogs. Obviously I can see the difference. I'm not going to walk up to a cow and try and pat it and call it Fido, but I don't see a logical difference between the two. I try not to preach. If people ask me about it, like now, then I'll answer the question, but it's up to your own conscience, I think. My conscience won't allow me to eat animals. I appreciate that other people's will, and as long as they don't rib me about vegetarianism, I won't come back at them about eating meat. Last one from Wyvern Biker. What is the least useful gadget you have bought? It's kitchen stuff for me. First one would be, it's not the least useful, it's probably very useful, but I was incredibly bad at it. You won't be able to tell on this, but my two little fingers are slightly different shapes. And the reason is that I got a mandolin. And I was getting quite good with a mandolin, with a cucumber, doing cucumber slices. And I just went that one slice too far. And it was strange, I did the slice, and I did the next slice before the pain started. And then on the final slice, there was blood everywhere. And when I looked on the worktop, there was just a little piece at the end of my finger. That was sore. It bled for about 10 days, I think. But it was sore. Probably I should have had a stitch in it, but you know, I couldn't be bothered to go to the hospital because I'm a man. But I suppose it's useful. So not useful would be my other kitchen gadget. It was a dehydrator. We'd decided that we were going to try and make something resembling a crisp, but without using potato. And the idea was dehydrate various other vegetables, cucumbers and what have you, and flavour them. And they work. It produces crisps, and they just taste bloody awful. So anybody who wants a dehydrator, let me know, because at the minute all it's used for is Mrs. Calm has her secret stash of chocolate bars in there. Let's have a look. Jack Jones, what do you do when you're not vlogging? Usual things, really. I enjoy my films. Bit of TV every now and again. More box sets than TV, to be honest. I mean, a lot of my time is spent learning technologies for work. So if you're not learning in the development game, then you'll be out of date within a year. So I spend a lot of time learning things, and I write a website about the stuff that I do. And I also do about an average of 1 minute a week of DIY. It's about 1 minute too much. Sir Bitchalot, will you ever reveal your true identity and admit that you are the Stig? No chance. If I admitted I was a Stig, Mrs. C would want to bring round James May for tea. I said she liked the long hair, didn't I? Dracati Ducati. How much time do you dedicate a day, stroke or week total to your channel? It's hard to say, really. I mean, ignoring the recording part, because that's just a byproduct of being on the bike, really, I would say I probably spend half an hour to 45 minutes a day going through and answering my comments. Probably about the same editing videos. So, what would that be? Probably 7 to 10 hours a week, something like that. But I enjoy it, so. Lurch on a bike. If you were to donate to charity, which charity or type of charity would it be and why? That would be cancer charities for me generally. I've said before I did an FRO on cancer, so you'll understand why if you've seen that video. And lurch on a bike, shorter or longer ride outs? Depends on the people. I like a ride out that's got a good ride in it. If I'm honest about the infamously calm, I think the ride part after with the main meetup was too short, but then everybody had ridden quite a long way to get there. It kind of worked out in the end. But I like a long ride, but I also like good breaks, because if all you're doing is going for the ride and you've got 10 bikes or 20 bikes or 40 bikes in the case of infamously calm, you want to actually, or I want to actually meet those people and talk to them all. and if the whole thing is riding, then you don't get that opportunity. Okay, more from the infamous biker. Are you left or right-handed? Right. What's your favourite colour? The in-depth probing questions. As Johnny Cash would say, I'm the man in black. They ask me why I always dress in black. Well, I've actually got a green t-shirt. My brother got me it for Christmas, but apart from that, black. What made you decide to get into programming? It's a puzzle. I like puzzles. When I was growing up, when I was very young, next door neighbour, he used to go. I mean, the next doors were like grandparents. I mean, I didn't really have grandparents that I could go and see. Most of my grandparents were dead. My grandfather died when I was quite young, but he lived 200 miles away. In fact, probably 300 miles away. So the next door neighbours were like my grandparents. And they taught me maths, and they taught me to think in different ways. They taught me to play drafts and chess. So did the next door but one neighbour. It was very much, we were in and out of each other's house. And they taught me about doing puzzles, and I always like puzzles. I like things that you have to think hard about. And software development programming is like the world's most difficult puzzle. If you had to pick, give up bikes or give up coffee, which would it be? I'd give up coffee. Don't make me do it. No chance I'm giving up the bikes. I'd have to drink tea. Last one from the infamous biker, I think. I've actually grouped these together where they've asked a few questions, but I've also grouped people together where they've asked the same question, so there might be another one of these popping up. Why do you think it's unnecessary for someone to be as big as me? That was from a ride out. It was actually Wyvern Biker who said, isn't he big? Isn't Kev big? And I think I said, yes, he's unnecessarily big. I take it all back. It's a wonderful form of carbon capture. The bigger you are, the more carbon you're holding, and therefore the more exhaust fumes you can produce. Sonny Wars, what's the funniest thing you've ever seen being out on your travels? That's a difficult one. I mean, you see a lot of funny cars. I've seen one today. When you see these cars that have been heavily modified, and you know that in their mind they're seeing the Fast and the Furious, but really it's kind of not. They're quite amusing. Skint Biker, would you dance in a lift in front of complete strangers? Probably, but I'm not sure it would be classed as dancing. I'm not the best mover. Mrs. Carm will tell you that. I put off our first dance at the wedding for as long as I possibly could, and by the time we did it, it wasn't really a dance, it was more shuffle around the dress. Who's next? The Web Monkey UK. My question is, if you could change one thing or law regarding riding or driving in the UK, what would it be and why? What? So many. There's so many things I'd love to change. I think one thing I'd like to see on the car test particularly is mandatory training for car drivers to have some kind of bike awareness. It's clear that car drivers don't know that things like filtering are legal, and some of them will try and kill you for having the temerity to pass them while they're in a queue. So that would be nice. Although I think what would be better would be standardising the progression aspect of learning to ride or drive. So in the UK now you've got this silly situation where you do a CBT and then you can go off and ride on L plates, a very small bike. If you're 17 you can do a test, but there's no real gain in it because you can still only ride a 125. and then at 21 you can do a slightly bigger bike, and if you've been on a bike for 2 years you can do a bigger bike still, and if you're 24, and it's a really ridiculous system of progression. And yet if you get in a car you can pass your test and then jump in your dad's Lamborghini. So I think some kind of standardisation there, where maybe for everyone, when you pass your test you could go on your 33 brake horsepower bike for 2 years and go on to then any bike you like. And in a car maybe you could only have a litre car, or a car with 50 horsepower or something like that. I think that would be a good idea. Who's next? Phil480. Who is your favourite TV show, film or film franchise, music genre, or band/artist and comedian? Blimey! How do you narrow those down? I don't know really. I mean, at the minute I'm going through 2 box sets. Shameless, which I never saw the first time round. I assumed it would be a horrible attack on the poor. I didn't realise it would be as funny as it was. And I'm also watching Breaking Bad at the minute. I think those are brilliant in completely different ways. What's next? Film. Again, there's so many in so many different genres. I think probably one of my favourite films of all time would be Goodfellas. Music genre or band artist, that's easy. Bit of rock or metal. If you can't see that, it's an Iron Maiden t-shirt with Eddie on a motorbike. Comedian. Ooh. I don't know if... Well, you can tell that your video's gone on too long when your battery runs out on your video camera. So hopefully this video won't be too long, but where was I? So I've recharged now. Phil480. So the last question was, who is your favourite comedian? And that really depends on my mood. I mean, one of my all-time favourites was Bill Hicks. Recently, kind of modern comedians, I suppose, somebody like Tim Minchin. If you haven't seen Tim Minchin, he's very close to the bone, and he's a bit of a genius when it comes to piano and a few other instruments as well, and writing his comedy songs. Alan Bradley, why did you change your bike? Well, that's an easy one. I didn't. I just added a second bike. The XJ6 is now going to be my touring bike, tour-up bike, maybe my winter bike and commuting bike, whereas the Z750R is a fun, nutty bike. So Bitchalot says, now that you have 2 bikes, which do you prefer? That's really difficult. The XJ6 is more sensible, better for distance work, definitely it's more comfortable, and it sounds better. The Z750R is quicker and more fun. So not a lot in it really. Count Motorhead says, you have 2 bikes, if you had to give one up, which would it be? I really don't want to give one up. I suppose if I had to giving one up, I'm going to twist the question a little bit. If I had to only have one bike, I'd probably trade them both in and get a Z1000 SX, and then you've got kind of the nuttiness and the touring capability. Another one from Count Motorhead. Scroll down a little bit. If you were stuck on a desert island and could only have 5 vloggers as company for your time on the island, who would they be and why? 5! Now I'm immediately thinking of escape and survival, so I guess Jim Payne, he would entertain us and he could make all sorts of gadgets, if you've seen the gadgets he makes, I'm sure he could make us something to get off. If we couldn't get off, he could certainly make us some beer so that we enjoyed it more. Coconut beer. There's an idea for you, Jim. Kev, the infamous biker, with his army training, I'm hoping he's got survival skills, so he should be able to keep us all alive. I suppose if we had things that needed fixing, then Tosh23, and if not, it'd keep us entertained either way. I suppose if it's a desert island, then that's got a beach on it. So we'll probably use somebody like Spicy 110 to be able to use his wildlife knowledge and beach knowledge to find us things we could eat. Hopefully he can find some vegetarian things and not just fish. And I think that's all bases covered, so I'll bring you along, Count Motorhead. We could write a book together. We could do a Count Motorhead to American conversion book. I always saying the Americans can't quite understand what you're saying. This is still Count Motorhead. What's the most interesting thing you've discovered since being a vlogger? I would say it's the people, really. Such a great bunch of people, always ready to help each other out. And the meetups and what have you have been brilliant. Hopefully we'll get a meetup somewhere a bit closer to Scotland at some point so we can have you involved in it. And have you ever done voiceover work for TV or radio? No. Next question, Wakey Warrior. Do you pre-prep your vlogs or is it ad hoc? It's pretty ad hoc, really. I haven't got my book here. I've got a tiny little book. I used to use post-it notes, but I've got a tiny little notebook that fits in a pocket, where if I have an idea for a vlog, I'll just jot it down. More of a title than anything. But no, I don't pre-prepare them. I thought you'd be able to tell. Who's next? Oh, last one. Ms. Old Fat 1. If somebody offered you a VFR 1200F for a month, would you take them up on it? Yes, without question. Are you offering? Fair enough. Well, that's a lot. So hopefully I've answered everything. I haven't missed anybody. So thanks for your questions, chaps and chapesses. Thanks for watching. If you've got this far, well done. Ride safe, everyone, and I'll talk to you all again soon.